Every company may employ their own definition of a CRM, but every CRM isn't created equal. Hello, everyone. My name is Ryan Minook, and I'm going to be your host for today's webinar. I'm joined by Mark Larochelle of Productive Computing, a Claris Platinum partner. And Mark's going to walk you through the best practices and tips to ensure your CRM is a successful component of your company's digital transformation. But first, let me walk you through how to ask a question. So head to the GoToWebinar control panel, click on the question section, enter your question, and click on send. We'll then dedicate some time at the end of the webinar for some Q&A. So Claris FileMaker is ranked #1 in G2 Crowd's Workplace Innovation Platform category and is a recognized leader in the low-code platform category by Forrester. Now we're really excited that Claris's Workplace Innovation Platform category, announced barely 2 years ago, is being acknowledged as an industry leader. But more so for today, I just want to instill confidence that if you're looking for the right platform to solve your CRM problems, we've got you covered. Because declaring the Workplace Innovation Platform category, that's just one piece of the puzzle. We have to deliver on its promise. And these 4 pillars help ensure that all new Claris features and innovations are aligned. So we need to continue to be cloud smart. The best and newest technologies, and subsequently, the best digital experiences are born in the cloud. So that's where we need to continue to invest first. And cloud is also going to help us deliver new features and innovations to the market much faster. We need to continue to create the best experiences on mobile and web. This is where users expect to consume their data. We need to continue to invest in integrations like the recently released Claris Connect product, which allows you to easily automate workflow integrations. And we need to continue to research and invest in emerging technology and unlock how to make these new, powerful technologies available to everyone. But having an effective category that extends far beyond the product. A robust ecosystem of resources, community, marketplace, and professional partners is imperative. So that brings me to Mark Larochelle, the founder and president of Claris Platinum partner, Productive Computing. Productive Computing has long been a trusted partner who has long embraced the benefits of cloud with their hosted offerings, integrations with their API and plugin work, alongside with their top work with custom app development. So we're really excited to have him here with us today. And with that, allow me to give the floor to Mark for the presentation.
Well, thanks, Ryan, and thanks everyone for joining us on this presentation. So you heard that I am Mark Larochelle, and I'm happy to be here today. And CRM is a subject near and dear to my heart. I've actually started with CRMs way back in 1994. I started with FileMaker back in 1991. So that's 25 years of CRM experience, and that was with FileMaker back then, but I also have experience integrating ACT and some other CRMs of the day along that progression and timeline. I am FileMaker certified 7 through 18, and I'm recently certified with AWS with 2 certs on that platform. That's Amazon Web Services. I have spoken in the past at FileMaker DevCon, now called Claris Engage, where I talked about subjects either on API or our perspective on the FileMaker Cloud offering. And I'm founder and president of Productive Computing. So Productive Computing has a rich history in the FileMaker world and on this platform. Our main source of revenue is custom development. However, people know us most for our plugins, at least in the community. Our plugins do everything from connect to QuickBooks and Microsoft Outlook, biometric devices, e-sign, signature pads, PDFs, and all kinds of things. So we've been doing plugins for a long time, and it really is something that's near and dear to our heart. Along with that, though, we also have solutions and have had solutions along the way, most notably a core CRM solution on the FileMaker platform. We also have a vertical market solution that we also use the FileMaker platform for, that we don't necessarily market to the community, but it is something we have as part of our product line. We also have passion in and around hosting FileMaker systems, and most recently, QuickBooks Desktop in the cloud. And we are one of the few companies, if perhaps the only company, that has both the FileMaker certs and the Intuit certs required to host QuickBooks Desktop in the cloud, and we can connect those two together, integrating with our plugins and so forth. So it's a neat offering. Our most recent offering is a new thing that we're actually particularly excited about. It's called Productive Computing University. And at the university, we teach on these subjects like API, certification, and many FileMaker related technologies, particularly the advanced technologies. That's where the university was born from. So we're excited about all the things we're doing. But today we're talking about CRMs. And when we think about CRM, first, we can define it with the three simple words, customer relationship management. And although that is easy to understand, the word customer is easy to understand, relationship management is easy. Wikipedia defines it a little bit more granular than that. So let me just quickly read this to you. Customer relationship management is an approach to manage a company's interaction with current and potential customers. It uses data analysis about customers' history with a company to improve business relationships with customers, specifically focusing on customer retention and ultimately driving sales growth. Well, that sentence and that phrase may just wash right over you. Let's just simplify it a little bit to say that it takes on the notion of improving business relationships, customer retention, and driving sales growth. Now, this is Wikipedia's definition of it, and perhaps their definition comes from a collective. But the more important thing is what your definition of a CRM is. And it's really important to get that down. So for a lot of people, a CRM means different things. For example, some people think a CRM is nothing more than a collector of cold leads, meaning people that are not purchasers of any products or services, people that aren't even interested in our services. We just are collecting leads from, let's say, a mail list that we purchased. We're putting them in a system called a CRM, and then we're targeting those people on a mass scale, and you could consider it sales development. While others say, well, no, it's not really for sales development. It's more to store all of those names of people that are interested in our products or services. We call those warm leads. Others say, well, no, wait, we're not going to pollute our CRM with leads. We want our CRM, after all, it's called customer. Why not just put just the customers, people who actually purchase something from us? And some people think of that. The truth is, it could be any one of these things or all three. So it's important to know what it is that you mean by customer service or customer relationship. Now, others say, well, it really does, it's not limited to the CRM portion. It actually extends to customer service, customer retention, even production, or even inventory. Some people actually say that a CRM is a lot more than just the contact management. It's our whole system. So the reason I spend a little time on that, it brings us to our very first secret, which is to define the needs and goals. Ask yourself some questions. What can't we do today, and what do we need from a system like this? Who will benefit from it? And what's it going to take to implement it? What are the costs involved, and what are the resources necessary? Let's define these a little bit closer in a little bit more detail. So customers tell us that the benefits that they receive when they either deploy a CRM, and it doesn't even have to be our CRM, it could be any CRM. Once they deploy successfully, here are some of the things that they walk away with. They now have a place to store their information. And that is really important because having a central place to store information all of a sudden defines a whole new way of creating efficiencies. The other thing that happens is on a sales team, you might find that each salesperson puts their contacts in a different system. Somebody might have their contacts in Salesforce, somebody brought over their old ACT database from the previous job, somebody's got their information in Excel, and all this information is all over the place. So having a centralized CRM is a great way to organize that. Once you have a central system, you can save time by finding contacts in a quicker way, particularly the Claris platform and FileMaker. It's really one of the best and strongest strengths of FileMaker is the ability to find information quickly. And then working with contacts becomes easier. So once you have this, you have a standard workflow that everyone can essentially work the same way, and you create amazing efficiency that way. Then let's say you have a CRM in FileMaker, that becomes the central hub or the anchor for all your information. It becomes sort of the groundwork where everything begins. Now, here's something that is often not talked about as a benefit, but it really is. Today, now more than ever, security is top of mind. Perhaps even more important than some of the efficiencies or performances, security is on the top of mind for most organizations. When you have a centralized platform that has tons of security features built in, you can take advantage of that and all of a sudden define and have security in a central system where all your information is now secure in a way that hadn't been before. Of course, with every CRM that you look at deploying, each one has individual features that may stand out and may highlight some things that you're interested in. So now we have to talk about the scope of who and what will benefit. For instance, which departments might be affected? Is it just limited to the sales department? Or does it include things like customer service, production, assembly, any of the other departments who would be touched by this particular implementation? Which areas of the business might be affected? Does it affect just our products, or does it also expand to our services as well? Will we be providing vendor access into the CRM, or will we be putting out reports that vendors can take advantage of? Same holds true for customers. Will customers have access to various parts and components of our CRM, or will we be producing things that will directly benefit customers? So it's important to note the scope of that. And then finally, when you're defining needs and goals, you have to kind of look at what it's going to take. And I'm going to pause on this particular one and talk about it just for a second. Leadership commitment. The customers that have the most success with deploying a CRM are those customers where the leadership of that organization is passionate about what a CRM can do for them, and they're very clear on the goals they're hoping to accomplish. The ones that don't have as much success are the ones that sort of say, well, we need a CRM, and it's more of a check mark on a box of things an organization needs, rather than looking at a CRM as a central place to really drive an organization forward and to bring things that they can, to offer them opportunities on things they can't do today. So that's a really important part of defining your goals. So make sure you have that leadership commitment. You do want to spend a little time looking at what fees are going to be required, what kind of setup do we need, what kind of customization do we need from the onset, what are the monthly fees, whether it be Claris licensing or the fees that you might use for any of the things that you incorporate, such as third-party services. What is it going to take to develop this, to test it, to refine it, to maintain it? Are there going to be ongoing modifications after we do the initial deployment? And what will those look like? Is our organization changing so much that we know that we're going to continuously need ongoing modifications? All right, so that brings us to secret number 2, keep it simple. So as much as these CRMs can do and as much customization options as you have, we still believe you need to walk before you run. This will help both with performance in terms of keeping things simple, fast, as well as the design you choose on the interface to keep it clean and modern. So let's explore a couple of these. And then easy systems are better adopted and better liked. So let's take these a little bit closer here. Reducing the scope. So when you have a small scope, you can gain some small wins early on deployment. You can work in phases. For instance, let's say that phase 1, we're talking about just having a system for a small team of salespeople to maintain their contacts, their tasks, and their events, and to produce reports and come up with call lists. That's a small phase. It doesn't include anything to do with customer service, production, or any of the other aspects of that. Once you have that small group, you now have built in experts on the system that you built for them. They become experts on the platform, and you start building traction with that first group. This really helps the deployment team because now they've got a group of users that have had successes. You can identify those efficiencies that that group has accomplished. For instance, the group might say, well, now it's easier to find contacts. I can export reports and get data that I never had before in the previous system. So you build that traction, you create efficiencies, and you start making great progress. Now, on the interface side, this is also something we talk about keeping it simple. You want to do your best to have a clean interface, something that's easy to understand, definitely makes it easier to train, and more fun to use. On the left side of the screen, you see an example of a customer's homegrown system. There's a lot of information on that screen, and they need a lot of that information on a daily basis. But you can see there's a different choice in colors, fonts, font sizes. Things aren't really lined up correctly. A lot to look at, and for a new user especially, this could seem overwhelming or maybe even not so organized. On the right screen, this is the same exact information cleaned up quite a bit. We introduced a different way to look at it. There's less colors, there's less going on. So it seems more professional, it's easier to use, and technically will be more fun and more adopted. Well, that brings me to secret number 3, integrate. This is about not recreating the wheel. Today's day and age, you can do a lot with the Claris platform. There's almost no limit to what you can build. But if you take advantage of integrating with other third-party services, such as mass mailing with MailChimp, or you want to integrate with accounting and QuickBooks, or you want to do online forms with Typeform, that integration gives you some distinct advantages. Along with some of the other things we talked about, you'll have to think about how do you want to deploy this? Do we have the resources, the skills, how much time is it going to take, and what additional licensing costs might be a result of integration? So I'm going to explore 3 options here in great detail, and we'll talk about some of the options we have today for integration with CRMs. Now, this first option is plugins. This one is near and dear to my heart because we started with our first plugin in 1998, where it automated printer choices and allowed us to do things that we couldn't do on the platform by itself. So plugins is something that has been around on the platform for a long time, and it's deployed many, many areas throughout the ecosystem. The neat thing about plugins is, for the most part, they just require the knowledge of basic scripting in FileMaker. It doesn't really require a lot of heavy-duty languages. You can greatly speed up deployment because of the low learning curve. And you can access the entire library available to you. For example, we have a plugin that works with QuickBooks, desktop and online. With that plugin, we expose everything you could possibly do with the given API on the back end, and we make that available using simple script steps. So that's what I mean by having access to the whole library. In addition, software and hardware is supported. So a plugin can work with the software like QuickBooks. It can also work with hardware, such as a biometric device or a signature pad. So there's some neat options you have with plugins. And they work mostly with FileMaker Client in a traditional sense. They also work server-side with the traditional version of FileMaker Server, and they also work with iOS if you build a custom iOS app. So a quick example of that, on the left here, I have a picture of our CRM. This is the sales module, and an order has been entered. On the right is QuickBooks. And for this particular situation, the user just had to push the Push to QuickBooks button at the top left, and the information goes from left to right. In other words, it goes from FileMaker to QuickBooks. And this sort of thing is happening right now throughout the FileMaker marketplace. And it's a popular thing to do because people have integrated 2 very powerful programs without having to create an accounting system in FileMaker. All right, so moving along with plugins, some other advantages. Like I mentioned earlier, it uses traditional scripting, so you don't need to learn a heavy-duty language in order to accomplish good results with a plugin. And you do have full access to the available API, which means that you have a library of options that the plugin can be exposed to, giving you some tremendous power and tremendous flexibility on what you can do with it. So that's option 1, plugins. Now there's a new kid in town. This is option 2, called Claris Connect. And I say it's option 2, not necessarily because it's number 2 on the list. It's just another option. So with Claris Connect, there's a lot of things to talk about and a lot of interesting things to learn. First, we have a lower learning curve. Just like plugins, Claris Connect does not necessarily mean you need to learn a heavy-duty language like C++ or any of the other languages that you normally need if you were the creator of a plugin. You can have customized workflows. So there's a lot of flexibility in the product where you can choose the direction of where data moves, how it goes from one app to another. And it works on the notion of triggers in action. And I'll show you the triggers and actions in a second here. I've got a pre-prepared demo of Claris Connect in action. And you can have built-in standard apps. So perhaps one of the biggest things to talk about here with Claris Connect is that it's pre-wired, predefined to work with many of the leading applications available today, such as MailChimp, Microsoft Office 365, Dropbox, Box.com, even QuickBooks. And we recently achieved a Claris Partner Connect status. So we're listed on the Claris website as one of those companies that can help you through this process. All right, so now I have a little demo prepared. This is a program called Typeform. And Typeform is an online web provider where you can then input your own fields and have available to you different fields that you can populate, such as first name, last name, company. You can collect data on the internet and have that go into FileMaker. Let me just take 1 second to grab a water. All right. So let's take a look at this. We've asked a customer to enter data on the web. Everything you're seeing here is created from a free Typeform account. We've asked for the first name, the last name, the company name. Then we have and asked them for what department they work in. And then we have their email address. We even asked them for a note. What would they like to learn more about a given topic? And when they push OK and then submit, what's happening here is Typeform is given that information, and Claris Connect is now moving that information to our hosted CRM in the cloud. And you can see Mark LaRochelle has been added here. And even the note that we asked for is neatly tucked away under the notes section in the portal. So what you're seeing here is integration from an online form directly to our hosted CRM. And I did that with Claris Connect with relatively easy setup. It took maybe a little learning on exactly how to set it up at first, but then there was no heavy duty programming required. So you saw it from the web to the CRM, but the same can hold true in reverse. Here on the left side, I have a core CRM hosted and ready to go. You can see ABC Company with Sarah Smith. If you look closely, you'll see a little Add to Outlook button there. I'm going to click that now. And on the right, I have Office 365 in a web browser. Here we have Sarah Smith added just moments after I clicked the Add to Outlook button. Now, some fields are not available within Claris Connect, but some of the main fields are. So you'll have to check out the different aspects that are highlighted and emphasized with Claris Connect. And we'll talk about some of those comparisons here in a minute. Now, that was the second way to integrate. The third way to integrate is directly with an API. That means you're going to construct the call directly to an API from, let's say, FileMaker. The disadvantage of this is that, generally speaking, it's a steep learning curve. It requires a little bit more advanced knowledge of programming, but more importantly, every API is different. So when you have different APIs, even though you learn the construct of what an API is, maybe how to manage tokens and things like that, it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to learn one API and then know all the other APIs. Each API is different, from Google to Salesforce, each one is different. Because it's harder to learn, it's going to take longer to build as a general sense, although once you get used to one API, you can deploy them fairly quickly. They offer unlimited customization, which is nice. You'll actually be able to do just about anything the API gives you the availability to do. So just like plugins, you have all the options at your fingertips. And in some cases, may not require additional costs. In some cases, they do. DocuSign, for example, is an API that, depending on how you use it, they'll charge you just to use the API. At Productive Computing University, we teach a lot about APIs. We have a course for Stripe integration. We have a course for QuickBooks Online, courses for MailChimp, and more. And most recently, DocuSign, as luck would have it. So go to Productive Computing University if you want to learn more about that. Okay, secret number 4, customization. So in any organization or any thriving organization, you'll find that things are constantly changing and or growing. You'll also see opportunities to automate the workflow, eliminate data entry, and doing more work in less time. The other idea about customization is people want a system that fits them. They want a perfect fit. So let's talk about that. So with customization, you have the ability to capture opportunities in the best way. For example, let's say you're in an industry that has recently changed something due to a world event. Now, all of a sudden, your people need to collect information they didn't have to collect before. So you might need to add fields or reports or different things around that notion. Customization allows for that to happen. In addition, because the information is changing, your reports are going to change. The forms that you're asking customers to provide information on are also changing. If you work for a government agency, things are always mandated and changing as they change their rules and regulations, so you do have to follow as well. Now, with more customers, as things grow, there's more vendors and more things to manage. An organization might say, hey, we want a new line of business. We were selling lawnmowers, now we're selling tractors as well. That's a new line of business. You're going to need changes in your system to accommodate that. And then with customization, technically you can make your system so that you can do more work relative to the headcount. In other words, more work with less people, or take the people that are already working for you and repurpose them in more efficient ways. Moving along with that customization, we talk about automation. And here at Productive Computing, our tagline is create efficiency through automation. So it's something that is passionate for us. And we've seen the power of automating a CRM. An example of that would be, let's say you're entering contact information and you're asking for address, city, state, and zip. And you have to do that each and every time. An example of automation might be first ask for the zip code and then reverse the city and state so that those are entered automatically. That's one tiny example of how automation can help. And then when you automate things, you can remove double entry. Like you saw with the example on QuickBooks, that's a form of automation, moving it from FileMaker to QuickBooks, removing the double entry and keeping things accurate. Then you can also create templates. Let's say, for example, that every new prospect, a series of things happens in an organization where you want, let's say, 4 tasks created. One task might be to send that prospect a welcome email. Another task might be to add them to your mass mail marketing system. Another task might be to assign the project manager a follow-up call to get them started. So when you're more efficient, you're better using the resources. And this is primarily why people want to automate things. So perfect fit is another reason people like to customize. And I use that word very carefully because the word perfect can be a dangerous word in the world of custom programming, but you might just want to say a better fit or a near perfect fit. When you have something that fits an organization, it's purpose-built for you and it works better. In addition, when you compare that to off-the-shelf systems, they tend to be very hard or limited to customize. So what we learned through most of this webinar is how powerful integration could be. Instead of making an accounting software in FileMaker, you can integrate it. So in a sense, you get the best of both worlds that way. And then customers tell us that once they have a system that's customized, they actually have a competitive advantage in the marketplace. They're able to do things that their competitors can't do because they have a custom system surrounding their ideas of where they want to move their organization, and they can do it quickly using the Claris platform. All right, now secret number 5, Project Manager SME, that's Subject Matter Expert. We find that without a project manager, the chances of your deployment going well greatly reduce. Project manager's job is to keep the project moving, control the scope, manage the details, and act as a liaison between users, developers, and admin. Subject matter expert provides the expertise, helps define the scope, interprets the jargon, and validates testing. So let's talk a little bit more about project management. So you definitely want to assign a leader to the project, someone who can be responsible to keep the project moving forward. And they create the master list of things that need to be done, manage the production schedule, and they are the ones that keep the pace of the project going with regular meetings. They also protect the scope. When someone raises their hand and says, well, I thought the CRM was going to provide information on this, project manager might say, well, no, actually, that's not phase 1, that's in phase 2. And all of a sudden, you've protected the project, you've protected the scope, you've kept things going on in the right way. And they also manage the budgets and report on the progress. So if you do have a budget for your deployment, a project manager is the person to really the first line defense for that. Now, sometimes the project manager is also the subject matter expert, which brings us to the subject matter expert. This person provides their expertise, especially in a technical industry, let's say a health industry or high-tech industry. You're going to need someone who can really interpret all the information that is part of a CRM or part of any solution for that matter. They help define the scope. So they work with the team to define what's important and what isn't, what's necessary, what's mandated, what's optional. They also interpret the jargon. A lot of times in various industries, there's so much tribal knowledge and or jargon or very high-tech information. Even within one organization, one department may not know exactly what the other department is doing. So they help interpret that. And then validate the testing. Once you have test data, developers sometimes have a hard time knowing if test data is correct or not because they don't know really what the expectation is. And a subject matter expert can look at that data and say, based on what I know about the data and how this is supposed to work, it's either working or it isn't. So that's a big part of how this all works together. And sometimes the subject matter expert is also the project manager. Well, we've just gone through all of the 5 secrets. I'll recap them for you here. Define the needs and goals. And on that one, I want to emphasize the leadership part of that. You want to make sure leadership is on board. Keep it simple. With that, we talked about keeping not only your interfaces simple, but keep the scope down, especially in the beginning. The third one is integrate. Essentially, you don't want to build one system necessarily that does it all. You have the option to integrate with other systems and have that more automated today than ever before. Number 4, the option to customize, the ability to use FileMaker as a great means to customize. And then the 5th is make sure you have a project manager and subject matter expert as part of your team. So to learn more, you can obviously go to claris.com. If you go to claris.com/connect, you'll actually go to the Claris Connect portion of that. Our website is productivecomputing.com. And then soon to be released are courses for Productive Computing University. And we will have on Productive Computing University, we'll have Claris Connect courses. We already have API courses, and we have full-featured certification preparation training too. So with that, I want to thank you for your attendance and open up the floor for Q&A.
Thanks, Mark. And again, this is Ryan with Claris. If you forgot how to ask a question, go to GoToWebinar control panel, click on the question section, enter your question, and click on send. Some of you are asking us if the webinar will be recorded, and it will be. So you'll get a link to the session at the end. All right, Mark, I have a question for you about Core CRM and the accessibility via FileMaker Go and WebDirect. Are there any differences between the two from a mobile standpoint?
So with our CRM, we do have dedicated layouts for the iPad specifically and WebDirect. We don't necessarily make a layout specific to the iPhone, but you could use one of those layouts for the iPhone. But yes, we do have layouts dedicated for the iPad as well as WebDirect.
Perfect. So the next question, you talked about identifying a project manager. Can you talk about like the best tips for identifying who would be the right fit for the project manager? Like how would you identify that person?
Well, this is a person, you want to get a person who probably is already a liaison within your organization, someone who's influential, can really help, because technically speaking, with a project like this, there are a lot of politics involved. We're talking about changing people's work environments. We're talking about creating efficiencies, and change in general in any organization can be met with resistance. So if you find an influential person, a person who knows the organization well or is really knows the department well, that can help. The other thing you need to do is you probably already have project managers within your ecosystem that you could use, people who specialize in making plans, keeping things to budget, keeping everything on track. So you want to find that type of person who already does a good job with that. So I think you combination of things, you try to find the right person. And then finally, does this person have passion on making the organization better? Because at the end of the day, that's what's going to drive these projects forward, is someone who really sees the light at the end of the tunnel, can see the goals the way they've been defined and understand them and get behind them.
Thanks. The next question, and this is pretty much a layup for productive computing, but can you talk about your integration with QuickBooks?
Sure. I mean, we integrate QuickBooks already. It's pre-wired for QuickBooks integration with both the online version of QuickBooks as well as the desktop version of QuickBooks. And when I say pre-wired, it requires the use of our FM Books connector plugin, which is sold separately, but it is pre-programmed to do that. So you could get the CRM, the core CRM, purchase that, and then you could integrate, use the plugin, and it is pre-wired to do some of the basic things, such as push a customer, push an invoice, a lot like what you saw in my brief demo of that. That's what we do today with the CRM. It's all pre-built in. And that's one of our claims to fame here at Productive Computing, is our expertise on accounting systems and those integration options.
So a question about emailing your customer base. Do you find it more beneficial to use FileMaker's native tools or integrate with a third-party service?
Great question. We get it all the time. And I can say that in the old days, we did promote the idea of using FileMaker to do a bit of mass marketing, and we even tried some ourselves. We quickly realized that as the world changes and as the people get more sensitive to spam, that we no longer use FileMaker directly as the means to send an email to a population, especially somewhere north of, let's say, 200. Once we get into those territories, we tend to use MailChimp. We've used Constant Contact in the past, but MailChimp is our current favorite. And the advantage you get with those systems is that not only do they allow you to send and craft nice HTML email, they have statistics and a lot of infrastructure built in and around the idea of really doing it the best way for mass mailing. Both reports and things like that. And then the other big elephant in the room is these companies are white labeled, which means that they've already gone through the certifications necessary to not be considered a spam source, or at least the beginnings of not being considered a spam source. When you send directly out of a FileMaker or any other local platform that isn't one of those entities, you always run the risk of alerting your local internet provider. They won't like the idea of sending emails on a mass scale, and it's just not white labeled. So yes, the answer is we use third parties to do mass mailing.
Excellent. So the next question is, Mark, if I have all my contacts in my CRM, but I want to share a read-only table of contacts to some non-FileMaker licensed users, what's the best way to do that?
Non-licensed FileMaker users. So it depends on how many we're talking about. There's options to do WebDirect in an anonymous way. You can, there's licensing for that. There's options to create your own mini website, in a sense, maybe a static website that can provide information to customers. You could export that and have that presented on the web. That will require a little bit of work, basic HTML and integration. You'll also have to you'll need a place to store it and serve it. Um, if the people don't already have FileMaker, then probably the web is the best way to present that. And I would use either WebDirect for that or an actual website and then pull the information directly. There's a lot of ways to accomplish that, but I think those are the two main ways that people use. And then they just determine how many people we're talking about and whether WebDirect is going to be used or an actual website to share information like that for people who don't already have FileMaker as a licensed FileMaker user.
Perfect. Now, you had also mentioned WebDirect a few times already, and we have a question about whether if they move forward with WebDirect, can you still take advantage of APIs for integrations?
Absolutely, and that really depends on how you want to deploy it. WebDirect is a means to serve the information on the web. The incorporation of an API is the means to move data back and forth. So as an example, you could program a button that is available on WebDirect that says push this contact to QuickBooks Online or push this contact to MailChimp. That button would be sending an API call, from the browser directly to the service and do that integration connectivity. So the answer is yes, you can totally incorporate both at the same time in any amount or means that you see fit.
Great. So the next question we have is, okay, if you're working with like a basic CRM, how many records should you have in that CRM before you need to start thinking about expanding?
That's a loaded question. It really does depend. My answer to that is it depends on how well the CRM is designed. And whether it can really accommodate multiple records. We've seen FileMaker easily handle 1 million records and be able to find those 1 million records quickly. We've also seen FileMaker not do so well on a lot less records because of the way it was designed or the construct of which it's trying to calculate all that information. So really the answer to that question is it depends. I'm going to say that for all of our customers, they've never exceeded the record count. That's really not been the issue of exceeding the record count. The issue has been, hey, it's slow because of the way it's designed, or it isn't working because of something uh, that's changed in the system. That it never has to do with record count. It almost always has to do with calculations and the way it's constructed.
Excellent. All right. So you had mentioned that productive computing offers different training courses. You mentioned even a upcoming Claris Connect training course. Do you know when that would be available for the
Yes.
public?
Yeah, well, our plan is, we don't have it now, but our plan is to have to create a course called Claris Connect Fundamentals or something similar to that. And our target for that is late March, early April, where we'll have a course like that available for both the people who buy the bundle and who have already purchased our university bundle. They get the whole school for one price. And then for people who are interested in learning more about Claris Connect. Now, Claris Connect by itself may not require a course for most people, but where it gets tricky is that each one of those connection points, whether it be Office 365 or the full featured Google implementation that they have, there's a lot there that really needs to be talked about, explored, and learned. And I think that a course would do that best because then you're really highlighting a particular app and your integration within that app. It goes a lot further than just the basic connectivity. So that our course is to look at what's on the other end of Claris Connect, whether it be Google or Office 365 or Stripe, because there's so much that goes on with those other apps that isn't really being talked about when we talk about integrating Claris Connect.
Excellent point. Looking forward to that. All right. On behalf of Mark and Claris, it was our absolute pleasure chatting with everyone today. Definitely hope that you could take some of these secrets and implement them into your own CRM. If you're interested in CoreCM or additional products and courses that Productive Computing offers, please definitely reach out to Mark. And with that, have a fantastic rest of your day, everyone.